Hi everyone, a very warm welcome to the present session we have over here. In this particular session, I have all the science and technology questions that have come in the prelims of 2026, which has happened 2 days back. Now, this particular session is exactly not for those people who have already given the examination, though obviously you can watch it, you can have a look, and because we are going to analyze how exactly the science and technology section has been in this year's prelims examination. This session is more useful for those who are going to give the examination next year, because we are trying to find out by all the 20 questions which UPSC has asked from the science and technology section, what does UPSC wants to say? What exactly is the trend? Has there been any change in the trend? And what exactly are the takeaways that we need to take from here so that we can prepare better in the coming year? And also, are there any traps, like is this paper the real replication or the real representation of how UPSC asks questions in the science and technology section? Fine. So this is a session wherein we'll try to understand what exactly has been the type of science and technology questions in this year's prelims examination and how it has been different from the previous years and what could we expect in the coming years, right? So first of all, starting with the number of questions, what has been the weightage of prelims of the science and technologies section in the prelims of 2026. Now, if you have a look over here, in the past 10 years, I would say, the science and technology section has been hovering around questions from 12 to 14 questions or maybe 15 questions, like that, including the defense dimension of that, including the defense technologies. But in this particular year, if you can see over here, we have 20 questions directly from science and technology, which is a huge jump even from what the number of questions which has been asked in 2025. And from all the years which we have seen, from 2021, it has almost doubled. So what does this show? Now, the basic problem which the students face in the preparation for science and technology or answering the science and technology questions is that they do not prepare science and technology from the very beginning. We obviously focus on the big 4 subjects, but science and technology subjects like environment or let's say IR or mapping is being left for the last. But if you look at the amount of number of questions which have come from science and technology and the related current affairs from science and technology, it is significantly more this year. Now, this has been the trend. If you look from 2021, the number of questions have kept on increasing. Of course, 20 questions is actually the limit. I'm sure that UPSC will never increase the number of questions from 20 because obviously then the other subjects are going to get compromised. Now, if we look deeper into the number of questions, like from which sections we had questions this year, and I'm going to discuss all the questions over here. If you look at this particular thing, you'll see that again, space dimension or the theme of space has maintained one question. Like it has been 1 or 2 questions only all across the years. If you have a look earlier, of course, we had more number of questions, 3 questions in the year 2018 and 2019, but more or less the number of questions has been 1 or 2, and this year also we only have 1 question. Although space, when we were taking up in the smart current affairs program, because there were so many dimensions, so many new news articles in the space, we were really expecting lot more questions from space as compared to what UPSC has asked this year. But that does not mean all those questions, all those topics are going redundant. Probably in the next year, UPSC might ask those topics again. So space is having 1 question. Biotechnology, again, consistently it has been around 3 to 4 questions. Now 2 questions in the past 2-3 years. So you see consistently 2 questions have been asked, and again 2 questions in this year as well. Now if you look at the section of health, we see a very big gap over here in health now. For the last 3 years, UPSC has not asked a single question from the dimension of or from the theme of health. Now this shows that health can become very important in the coming year. So for those who are preparing for next year, we need to keep this in mind. Now, why this analysis is important right now is because everything is fresh in our mind right now. We have had a very different and a very difficult paper this year. Obviously, other sections like polity, economy, in fact, most importantly, history has been very, very difficult. The kind of questions have changed, the format of questions have changed, right? And obviously, we understand that it was not that difficult, not that easy for the students to attempt the the question in the examination, right? So therefore, since everything is very fresh right now, we need to do the analysis right now so that we can prepare better for the coming prelims, okay, the prelims which will happen next year. Now, if you look at health, we do not have any question, but now see Ebola and everything is coming up. Probably in the next year, definitely the question from health might come. Then, when you go to the section of alternate energy and emerging technology, this has been the section which has been dominating in the last 2-3 years. So, if you look at it, 7 questions, 5 questions, 3 questions. So, earlier, of course, the number of questions were less, but as we are moving towards the technology era, the world is moving towards the technology-driven world, we see the number of questions increasing from the emerging technology. Although we were expecting a little bit more questions from alternate energy as well, there seems to be an imbalance. 8 questions immediately from emerging technology, and if you have a look at it from the past trend, we see that number of questions have never crossed 4. 4 is the maximum number of questions which have had from the emerging technology, but this year significantly high. A lot of questions from AI, a lot of questions from quantum, blockchain, all those themes we saw in the UPSC's prelims paper. Now, this is not very surprising, though it looks a bit unbalanced. It is not surprising because a lot of developments is definitely happening in the emerging technology segment. So that is why we have good number of questions, but obviously I would have expected a slightly more balanced section in this particular region. Now, if you again look at the next section, which has been ignored by UPSC for past many years, and that is the section of IT and communication. And to be very honest, this year it was expected that at least you will have some questions on, let's say, 5G or 6G, all those technologies which are coming up. Probably they should have put 1 or 2 questions over here. But again, this section is something which is not getting the required importance from UPSC. Again, that does not mean it will continue this way in the coming year. Definitely what we can see in the coming year is that the relevance of IT and communication might go up, because this section was not always irrelevant. We had 4 questions in 2022, we had 3 questions in 2020. So it was not that irrelevant previously, but in the past 4 years we have seen a significant dip or almost elimination of this particular sector. Now, another important trend, and which is actually as per the trend, is the increasing number of questions from the defense area. Now, it's not just defense technology wherein we had the questions earlier. So, if we had questions from security in the previous years, it was majorly dominated by the defense technology. They would ask about certain submarines, they would ask about certain missiles and all those kind of things. But this year, the question is also dominated by defense regulation as well as defense architecture or the institutional architecture, and that is why you see a significantly high number of questions from security. And this is definitely which was expected. Even in the classes, the smart current affairs classes, we discussed that you might see more number of questions from security and defense this year as compared to the previous years, because of course a lot of wars are going on, and even India also had this Operation Sindoor last year. Okay? So because looking at that particular thing, we have more number of questions. So majorly this year we see the dominance of emerging technology and security as the theme, although other sections did have their 1 or 2 questions, but this is a theme which was dominant, right? Now we'll enter into the detailed analysis of each and every question that has been there in the UPSC's prelims examination. So first of all, I'm picking up the most relevant section, which is the emerging technology section. Now over here, I would like to set the premise that the other sections of the paper, which is, let's say, polity, or let's say economy, or say history, all those, now polity and economy considerably were used to be the favorite section for the students, because the sources were simple and the questions were also not that difficult. We used to have more faith, we used to have more confidence over these 2 sections, but this year something has flipped, right? And in fact, when we look at the other sections like science and technology and environment in the previous years, these 2 sections used to be the difficult sections, because the questions were fairly more factual, or even if the conceptual questions were there, it was difficult in nature. But this year, this flip has happened. The polity and economy section has become comparatively very difficult. History, I'm just not comparing also. It's one of the most toughest paper this year. But the science and technology and somewhat in the environment section has become slightly easier. So you understand this particular thing, that even UPSC would try to maintain this balance, right? So but the problem which happened this year is that section became tougher, and in fact the kind of questions which they were asking and the way they were asking the questions both have become tougher. That is the flip which has happened. The subjects in which we used to be confident, that has become tougher, and the subjects which were usually getting ignored, that became easier. But since we were not focusing on those subjects majorly as students, that is why the entire paper looked tough, because difficult subjects like science and technology and environment we anyways were ignoring. So this is the situation or the story of this year's prelims examination, and this shows us one thing definitely, that we need to focus on all the subjects almost equally. We cannot just rely, we cannot just come and within 2 months just quickly go through all the things, and you cannot just expect to have confidence or let's say expertise in the subjects that you are leaving. So this is one first lesson I think which we can draw, the takeaway, because this video is all about takeaways, the learnings for the next year. This is the first thing that we are coming up with, is that you need to focus on all the subjects equally. We cannot ignore the subjects. Okay. Now starting with the first section, which is the emerging technology section. In that, the first question, and this question 60, it is from section D, if in case you want to match it. So the first question is from critical energies or critical minerals. Now understand this, when we analyze a particular question, now this is for the next year if you want to analyze any paper. Now this is the same thing you have to do for other papers as well. So when you look at any particular question, you have to analyze, okay, what is the theme of the question, why that particular theme has been asked, what exactly has been asked from that particular theme, is there any past correlation of this particular question or of this particular topic, has this topic been recurrent in the UPSC's paper, and what could be the future predictions, or let's say what could be the future trend with respect to this particular theme. So this is the basic analysis that you need to do. So if you look at the topic of critical minerals, of course this is a very important topic, because this is why in the entire world we are looking at mining of critical minerals, mining of rare earth elements. All those things are going on, and this is very, very important in the electronics industry, in the the highly emerging electronics industry, in the semiconductor industry. All those areas, the magnets and everything, is coming up from the critical energy segment. So since the world is digitizing, we are fastly moving towards technology. The technology is developing, the use and the importance and the application of critical minerals is rising, and that is why you see even the wars which is happening today, and the lot of conflict which is happening today, even the trade wars which is happening today, is based on the critical minerals. So it was completely in news, right? So this definitely is a very predictable theme, and it is not something which is completely out of syllabus. Now the first thing that we'll analyze is what exactly has UPSC asked in this particular question. So if you look at the first statement, they're simply asking where exactly the critical minerals are used. So in the modern technologies, including AI, robotics, space exploration, there is huge amount of importance, huge amount of utilization of the critical minerals. So they are asking about the use case or the applications, where exactly the critical. Now you have to remember, this is the dimension which UPSC is asking, right? And this dimension is very important to understand, because only when you understand the dimension, you will be able to study any particular topic in the right direction. So under critical minerals or under rare earth elements, you can study everything under the sun, but that is not something which UPSC will be asking. So understanding the dimensions of the question, what UPSC is trying to ask, is very, very important when you analyze any paper, be it prelims or be it the mains paper. The second statement is about which country has the highest share in mining. Now, of course, this is something which is going on in the news. China is dominant in that particular area, right? But the question is trying to ask whether you understand the position of India or not. So whenever you are dealing with any particular dimension of any particular topic, you have to see what is the state of India, what is the state of your own country in that particular dimension, whether India is good in that particular technology or not, whether India is good in that particular mineral or not. So comparing the countries with India is very, very important, right? So over here, we are talking about comparison between India and the other countries, and that is something you need to know. The third statement talks about what are the steps which the government has taken. So basically critical minerals is very important. So therefore has government of India taken any particular step so that we become independent, or at least we reduce our dependence on the other countries with respect to critical minerals? Then only we can have sovereignty, all the different types of sovereignty, right? So that is the third statement. So it is about the steps which the government has taken. So whenever you deal with any particular topic, not just critical minerals, any particular topic, you have to think in this particular dimension. Okay, you have to think what are the steps which the government has taken. Now understand this topic is very crucial for the mains as well, and this is the same analysis that you would do in the mains as well, right? Now the fourth statement is about the basic understanding of critical minerals. Basically the first question that you would ask whenever you are reading critical minerals or rare earth elements is, what exactly are critical minerals? Give me the examples of critical minerals, right? So that is something which is there, the basic foundational question. Okay, the examples of, you need to understand the examples of critical minerals, right? So this is how you analyze the first question. Now, of course, do we see the correlation of this particular thing in the past? Yes, UPSC has asked a PYQ on critical mineral. The last year itself, they have asked PYQ in 2025 itself, and I'll show you the PYQ later. Now understand this, what could be the future questions? Like what kind of questions can come now? They have asked about the basics of critical minerals. They have asked about the steps taken by the government. They have asked about the comparison between India and China. What is left? What exactly is left? Can you think of it? So obviously what is left is the characteristics of critical minerals or characteristics of rare earth elements. Why exactly are they popular? So if they are used in, let's say, the areas of AI or robotics or space, why exactly are they used? Okay, they are majorly used for making magnets, right, and multiple other uses. So you need to understand that in future they can ask about the actual fundamental uses or fundamental characteristics of the critical minerals, because of which they become so important. So this is the futuristic dimension. This is the dimension wherein you have to read this particular thing in the future. Now this is something, a very predictable question, right? And I'm sure wherever you would have read your current affairs from, be it any magazine, be it any source, any institute, definitely they would have covered. Similarly, in the Smart Current Affairs program, we had covered the critical minerals in great depth. Over here, I have given all the examples of critical minerals, like how many critical minerals are there. So, of course, over here in this particular question, if you see, there are not 13 minerals. So, UPSC has the habit of changing with, playing with the data. So, it is actually 17. There are actually 17 rare earth elements over here. This definitely is correct. Of course, India is not is so good in terms of mining of rare earth elements right now. China definitely is among the highest, but it is not followed by India. So statement number 2 is also wrong. This, of course, is a very general statement, and therefore it is correct, right? So that could be the answer for this particular question. Second statement is wrong, of course, and even the fourth one is wrong. So if you remove that, you have 1 and 3 as the answer over here. Okay. So now in the classes we had very comprehensively covered this particular thing. All the 17 critical minerals are mentioned over here. Then the state of China, how exactly China is dominating not just in the upstream, midstream, but also in the downstream segment of critical minerals, and what exactly is the problem of India. India's reality is something that we had discussed in the classes, and that is how these classes help, that you get each and everything in a very consolidated format at one particular place. Even this particular national critical mission, national critical minerals mission, is something which was discussed in the classes, and I am sure that this is not a very difficult question to predict, and therefore from wherever you would have read the current affairs, be it any magazine or any source, they would have definitely covered these critical minerals. Now, as I told you, UPSC has already asked this particular question in 2025, and do you think this question is going to vanish away from this year? No, not exactly, because the use cases of critical minerals, the dimensions, the analysis around critical minerals is going to become even more tougher, right? So therefore, newer dimensions will open up, some strategic partnerships will come in, even the characteristics, as I told you, of critical minerals, that is going to become important for next year. So this is how you analyze the first question. All right. Let's moving on to the next dimension, which is of artificial intelligence. Now this again is a very important dimension. In the AI Impact Summit happened in India, so of course this dimension becomes very important, and AI is something which has deeply penetrated each one's life. So that is why of course this question, the question on AI had to come. Now if we look at the first question, this question is on LLMs, something which has been quite popular in the past few years now, large language models. So of course, I am sure that from wherever you would have read the current affairs, you would have read about the LLMs as well. Now the good thing about this particular thing is that the question is comparatively easier. So if you have read about LLM, like we discussed LLMs in our classes, the smart current affairs classes, but if you have read about LLMs, all these three statements are very easy to decipher, because these are very conceptual statements about LLM. There is no trap over here, there is no confusion over here. UPSC is not trying to derail you by giving anything. The only difficulty over here is the kind of language. I think the LLM has been used to create this particular question also. So the language, I feel, could have been slightly easier to the students, because in the examination reading such big statements and such complex statements become definitely difficult. Even if I would have been sitting in the examination, at least I would have read the question twice or thrice to exactly understand what the question is trying to say. But more or less, this particular question is an easier conceptual question on LLMs. So the first statement is trying to say that do they assign probabilities to the next possible word? Yes, that is how the LLMs are functioning. They function on the probabilities, and that is how they choose which particular word has to come. So for example, after new, right, either New York can come, York can also come, or even Delhi can come. Now this is the probability which LLM has to decide depending on what has been going on before this. So if you're talking about India before this particular thing, obviously the LLM will say कि after new, Delhi has to come. But if you're talking about America before this particular thing, obviously the LLM will say कि New York has to come. So that is a simple understanding of LLMs. And do they process data using mathematical optimization to minimize the error? Of course, that is the X factor of AI. They are trying to minimize the error, but of course they cannot completely minimize the error, and therefore the term which even I was expecting could be asked is AI hallucination, right? AI hallucination. Now understand this particular thing, that even though UPSC has not asked this particular term this year, they can definitely ask this particular term in the next year, because all these LLMs and everything is not going to vanish from the world right now. They have only started to increase, right? So all these words, and that is something which we had discussed in the class also. What more UPSC could have asked, because many other things were in news. For example, LAMs, which is the large action models, was in news. You would have heard about agentic AI. Definitely it was in use, right? And something which UPSC could have asked question this year, but probably they can ask next year. Then India has, now why this LLM became important? Because India has created its own Bharat Gen, right? Bharat Gen model, its own indigenous model. So all these factors made LLM very important. And if they have not asked this year, obviously there is paucity of the number of questions. They can definitely ask among these dimensions in the next year. So you need to be prepared from the AI dimensions in the next year as well. It's a very important dimension. The third statement is a statement which says that it gives unbiased outputs. Of course, LLMs are being trained, now general understanding, they are being trained on certain data. Until and unless this data is unbiased, the output obviously cannot be unbiased, right? So that is something which is the understanding of this question. It was comparatively, I would say, for those who have read LLMs, even at the basic level, it was an easy question. Now this is the dimension where UPSC can go further. And has UPSC asked on these kind of questions previously? Obviously not LLMs, of course. We do not have a question on LLM previously. But on technology, definitely UPSC does keep asking questions. Whatever technology is becoming popular in the news, they do ask the questions, right? So that is something. Now even in fact, there are dimensions which are more deeper into LLMs, maybe let's say level 2 dimensions. Even over there UPSC can go. So for example, in the classes we had discussed about the certain terms like parameters or weights and biases. All these terms, definitely these terms just maybe in a one-liner questions can definitely be asked, and that is how even LLMs were discussed in the classes as well, right? So that is about the the first question under artificial intelligence, which is about LLMs. The second question under artificial intelligence is the AI India Summit or the AI Impact Summit, right? Now, this summit happened in India. Of course, it becomes very, very important. If not, they would have asked this year, definitely they would have asked next year. But they have asked this particular thing in this year itself, right? So whenever you have any particular summit in front of you, what you have to do, first of all, you need to have all the information, all the points, all the declarations, whatever has happened in that particular summit. Now, this summit got very popular because of certain incidents. A particular university got very famous in this particular incident. I'm sure you all would be knowing this. So definitely it was very predictable that this particular summit is definitely going to come to the examination. Even last year they had asked about a similar summit in this particular domain, right? Now, was this question easy or difficult or moderate? I would say that this particular question was not that easy, again because of the kind of language that they have used. Look at the second statement, such a big statement, right? And I talked to a lot of students and they have said that they all have gone for making this particular statement correct, because when you're reading such a big statement, you miss out on certain words which is wrong. The entire statement is correct. Like there is not very significant problem in this particular statement, just that the framework is voluntary in nature. It is not binding in nature. That is the only problem in the second statement. Now in the first statement, still there is a problem. Yes, it is based on 3 foundational sutras, which is people but not planning. It is planet. Okay, now this is the level which this is what UPSC is trying to do, and this is what we have to understand. They're changing one particular word itself. Now this becomes very difficult during the examination to figure out, okay, this word has been changed, because we are in hurry, we are in lot of hurry to solve this particular question. In fact, the paper was so big that we definitely would have missed this particular part, and therefore even though the question is not difficult, even though what they have asked about the question is not difficult, it is nothing technical over here, but still the way they have framed the question, definitely some of you might have got it wrong itself. The third statement definitely is an easier statement. They have asked, it is a major point under the AI summit, the 7 chakras, which even we had discussed in the classes. So again, what is the inference from this particular question? Number one, what UPSC is asking is basic facts or basic points under the summit. So whenever you have a summit, please read all the points, or at least the most important 5-10 points that is to be read. And the 5-10 points, definitely we will get this particular thing. Direct source is PIB. You can get the entire information about this particular summit from PIB. It's a direct source. There is no need to read from anywhere else. And can this continue later? Yes, questions on AI definitely can continue later, as we have discussed in the previous question. Has there been question on AI previously? Yes, there has been question on AI previously, on the application of AI. Some easy questions, some difficult questions as well. But this question, I would say, in the gist of it, it is an easy question, but in the examination, probably you would have missed these 2 small changes which UPSC has made. And this is what you have to recognize, how exactly UPSC is creating the paper, by making very small changes, minute changes, right? So this is the understanding about this particular question. Now, in fact, over here again, same in the classes, we had discussed about the India AI mission and the entire AI summit which had happened, this particular thing, and the 7 chakras and everything. So everything was covered in the classes. I'm sure that this would have helped in the examination as well. Now, next topic is about the quantum technology. Again, this was a very predictable topic. So that is what I'm saying. In science and technology, except for 3-4 questions, which obviously we are going to discuss, all the other questions were on very predictable range. And that is why I'm saying, as compared to other subjects like polity or economy or history, science and technology was comparatively on an easier side, at least in terms of the themes that were there in the paper, right? So some difficult section, some easier section. This time science and technology was comparatively on an easier side. So if you look at this particular question, the National Quantum Mission, now, if in case you have ever heard of National Quantum Mission, you would have definitely heard of these 2 things. These are one of the most basic aims, right? So what is the dimension which UPSC is asking? They are asking about the aim or the objective. Now, whenever you have a mission, you have to look at the aim of the mission. Now, why quantum has been asked? Of course, because of the National Quantum Mission, but also because of the Nobel Prize which went to quantum technology, or in fact quantum tunneling this particular year, right? The Nobel Prize of Physics in 2025 went for quantum tunneling, right? So this Nobel Prize, because of this Nobel Prize, quantum technology or quantum segment became very important, and even India is putting in a lot of effort with respect to quantum technologies. So again, not a very difficult question to predict. Definitely it's a very easy question to predict, and in the dimensions also they are asking very easy things, which is just the aim of the question. Okay? And even over here they have not changed anything. They have simply picked up the statements and they have put the statements, and both the statements are correct. Now, this is again something which from wherever you would have read this particular National Quantum Mission or about quantum, you would have read about this particular theory or this particular content. Not a very difficult content to even predict. Fine. So, even in the classes, we had discussed about all the aims and objectives, and we had discussed about the 4 T hubs which is there under the quantum mission. Fine. Now, this is a question which is the quantum Nobel Prize question, and which is something a frustrating question. Why it's a frustrating question? Now, is this a question which is predictable? Yes, it is predictable. Why? Because Nobel Prize was there. You should definitely study about Nobel Prizes. Therefore, this question is justified. But the way they have asked, or rather what they have asked, is certainly questionable, or at least it is very difficult for the students to remember such details. Now, what are they asking? They are asking about the scientist. That is okay. That is okay. They are asking about the name of the scientist who has got this Nobel Prize. But what are they asking? They are asking this scientist should have been born in UK, right, and should have been the professor of an American university when the prize was given. Now, you might remember the name of the person, but you will not be taught even ki whether this person was the professor in American university or whether he was born in UK. Right? So these are the depths about a particular person. You could have asked the depth about, you could have at least asked what exactly is quantum tunneling over here, right? You could have asked that particular thing. But no, UPSC has not asked that particular thing. Now, this is something which is comparatively a frustrating question, and it becomes frustrating for another reason also. And I'll show you the reason. Now, these two people, A and C, even if someone would have remembered the name of the 3 people who got the Nobel Prize, both these are among those 3 people. A and C both are among the people who got Nobel Prize in 2025 in Nobel Prize in Physics. Now, they have not even mentioned physics over here, right? They should have mentioned, but still, that's fine. So, Nobel Prize in Physics in 2025 in the quantum tunneling was shared by this person A, C, and there was a third person as well. Now, how come you are supposed to remember such details, and then you are giving 2 people who are among the sharer of that particular award? That is something which made this question almost impossible to solve in the examination, even if you had known the answers, right? But fortunately in the classes, and that is something which even I am surprised, that in the classes at least I had mentioned in my handout that John Clark was working in the UC Berkeley University when the Nobel Prize was given. But I very clearly remember when I was giving this particular content in the class, I told the students that you need not remember this particular details. Of course, no one will advise to remember such details, and nowhere I have told that this person was born in UK, so anyways you could not have solved the question. But that is the understanding of this question, that UPSC has stooped to such level. Although some difficult questions are acceptable, but you could have asked the actual technology as well. Okay, so this is about these are the 3 people who have actually got the Nobel Prize. Look at this, Michael H. Deverett and John Clark, both were in the options, and that is what we were discussing. Fine. Now, have the UPSC asked questions on quantum previously? Yes, they have asked questions on quantum previously, and previously the questions have been pretty easy. Now, this year we had 2 questions. In the last all the years, we just have 2 more questions. One question was asked in 2025 and the other one was asked in 2022. Now, this is one of the developments of quantum chip which happened. Even this was taken in the class last year, and they had asked this particular question, comparatively a factual question that year. And this is a very the basic concept of quantum, which is the qubit, right? So, the UPSC had asked this particular question. So, quantum. Now, quantum, even when we were trying to understand what topics can come in the examination, I was very sure that question on quantum has to come, because quantum is something which is increasing, and in fact they have not asked what question UPSC has not asked. If you look at it, they have not asked any question from nanotechnology, right? None of the questions from nanotechnology has been asked, even though developments keep on happening in nanotechnology. But quantum is the new emerging field. Even more than AI, quantum is going to become important, right, in the coming future, because when AI has to function properly, they would need even bigger computers, even faster computers, and over there the quantum computers will play a very, very big role. And that is why India is also taking very significant, very serious steps towards quantum technology, and therefore quantum definitely deserved a question, so no doubt about it, right? Moving on to the next part, which is blockchain based questions. Now again, in the blockchain, this question had come. Blockchain is a very simple technology, or let's say a technology which I think all of us now know, because this is not a very new technology. This has been in news for maybe more than 5-10 years now, and this came into the question, or the current affairs relevance of this particular topic is the national blockchain framework which the government has launched. Now the government wants that these startups and everything should start creating their own blockchain based applications, just like we have UPI, wherein all these companies, Phone Pay, Google Pay, Amazon Pay, all these can come together and create their own payment system. Similar, the government wants to create a common infrastructure wherein you can create your own, on the basis of which you can create your own blockchain based application. Now blockchain has a very important role, but what question have they asked? Now this is the trigger of this particular question. They want to ask a question on blockchain, and they have asked a very basic and fundamental question on blockchain. But does that mean they will stick to fundamentals in the coming future itself? Can they not ask deeper into the applications of blockchain? Can they not confuse over there? Can they not ask about various applications, new age applications which will come on blockchain? They can definitely ask, and that is going to be the future of this particular theme. The applications of blockchain, where they can be used, where they cannot be used. In fact, they can ask about the challenges of blockchain, right? Challenges of blockchain or the issues of blockchain, for example, huge amount of energy use, right? All those things can come in, or maybe proof of work and proof of stakes. All those concepts can also come into the UPSC's examination, right? Because blockchain again is going to grow. But over here they have asked comparatively easier question. Why again easier? Because if someone understands blockchain, these two statements are comparatively very easy for them to know. These two statements are correct. Yes, it is stored in the database. The records are stored in database, which is which only relevant stakeholders can access. You can control the access of the data. And second, yes, you have multiple copies in multiple computers. Each one of us have the copy in our own laptops or in our own computers, and then there is a central database also, which is having the copy, the main copy of blockchain, the data of blockchain, right? Now, the fourth statement also was comparatively easier one only the again the wording was heavy. They have used very heavy words, very difficult words, or let's say very lengthy statements to ask this particular question. That is another change which UPSC has brought in. Since we're talking about the trend analysis, this is another change which has come up with respect to science and technology, that earlier the questions were or the statements were comparatively simpler. You need to know the fact, you need to know the concept. Now even the statements are comparatively tougher, or they are more complex in nature, at least this year. Probably next year they might change this particular thing, but this year at least the statements are bigger. They are not that conducive to read. Those things definitely exist in this particular paper. So even this is a easier statement, that yes, once the data has been entered in blockchain, it is known as immutable, and therefore that is why it becomes almost impossible to change this particular thing. The third statement is something wherein you need to know the type of blockchain, how many types of blockchains exist. So there are public blockchains, private blockchains, hybrid blockchains, consortium based blockchains. So consortium over here is when too many people are coordinating a blockchain together. So obviously public blockchain is like somewhere where everyone has the access. So for example the bitcoins that you have, the ethereums that you have. Private blockchains are those in which you can only have access after you have the permission. Everyone cannot just enter, or everyone cannot just access the data. Consortium is basically the management of blockchain, like how do you manage the blockchains, right? Is the ownership under one particular person's control, or it is guided by multiple people together, right? So when the blockchain is public plus private, this is actually known as the hybrid form of blockchain. So for example, the internal mechanisms will be private, but the validation and everything can be public, like that. Okay, so some mechanisms can be private, some mechanisms can be public. That is the hybrid kind of a blockchain. So this is the only statement which is wrong over here, and from there you'll get the answer. But the understanding of this particular question is that this theme will replicate in the coming years as well, in the form of applications, in the form of challenges of blockchain. Okay, or if in case some new step which the government takes, especially from the national blockchain framework perspective. Okay, so this is something which is going to happen in the future, right? Now next question. So again, this national blockchain framework was there in the CAM test also, and we had covered this particular thing. Now even previously also in 2020 UPSC had asked a question on blockchain, and probably this question was comparatively difficult as compared to the 2026 question. So that is why I'm saying ki the level of questions has been made easier this year as compared to the previous years of science and technology. So I'm comparing this year's science and technology by previous years of science and technology. So from that perspective, at least few questions were easier as compared to the previous years, right? Moving on to the next one, the next segment is the semiconductor segment. Now again, just because critical minerals is important, semiconductors are important for the same reason. They are being used in the electronic industry and all the other developing emerging technology industry. Without semiconductors, none of your electronics is going to function. So Dhruv 64 is a very important one, because this is the indigenous microprocessor which the government which India has developed. Now of course, we have huge dependence with respect to the microprocessors and chips on the other countries, and India is trying to develop its own chips. It is trying to reduce the dependence, therefore gain more of sovereignty, and that is why this particular question was asked. So fairly I would say, if you have read this particular thing, it was very easy to solve. Now over here, when you try to solve this particular, let's say if you might not have heard this statement or this particular topic, the students would definitely have got confused on certain things. So they are saying that this is a third chip. So actually, yes, this is the third chip. They had previously two other chips, indigenous chips, but this is the third one, which is the more famous one. And then they might have gotten confused whether it is 1 gigahertz or not, right? 64 to 64 is matching over there, so definitely you will not get confused over there. So because we have an inherent understanding that, okay, UPSC tries to play with the data, tries to play with the number, probably if you would have tried to solve this particular question using any such techniques, you might have got the wrong answer, because over here, both the statements are actually correct. So this is again a predictable theme, because this particular topic, the semiconductors, is predictable, and that is why I'm saying, again, not a very complex question. Yes, it is factual. So if someone has not read, again, it was almost impossible for that person to solve this, right? So I would keep this in the moderate category. We go on to the next question, and this is again a very frustrating question from UPSC, just like that particular question on Nobel Prize or the quantum tunneling wala question. Now what they have asked over here, again, the theme is fine. They are trying to ask about semiconductors, but what are they trying to ask? Ki where exactly the plant of semiconductor is coming up in India, and by which particular companies. So which company is establishing the plant in which particular state of the country, right? I am not saying that you are not supposed to know this particular thing. Yes, you are supposed to know this particular thing, but you cannot recall, you cannot remember everything in the examination. So the question arises, how do we prepare for such kind of questions? Or do we really prepare for such kind of questions? Because in the mains examination, now this particular fact, this is a fact, no? This is very important for mains examination. Obviously, you will not have to write it was in Gujarat, it is in Assam, or it is in Madhya Pradesh, like that. But at least you need to know few examples. Then only your mains answer become more heavy, or becomes more good to look at, right? Or has more value. So you need to remember few names, but you cannot remember the exact state, right? Or at least you cannot recall those states during the examination. So that is why if the commission has decided to ask such kind of questions, I would say right now we do not need to run behind such questions. Even if such questions come in the examination, it's better to leave such questions, because running behind such questions, you are going to run behind multiple other factual information, which is going to waste a lot of time. So my suggestion would be that it's fine. Even if you are not able to solve this question, it is fine. It was to be left in the examination. In the actual examination, this question was to be left, right? That's very, very okay. If you knew on the answer, of course, you can do it. So over here the answer is this, because this is not correct. They have asked which is not correctly matched. So this is in UP actually, the Javar project over there, and all the other three are Correct. But this is something you should not run behind, okay? Next is the biotechnology section. As I've told you, we had 2 questions from biotechnology this year, just like we have 1 or 2 questions, 3 questions from in the previous years as well. But there has been one change. Now, biotechnology is a segment which actually used to be slightly difficult in the previous years. They were not simply asking very simple questions on biotechnology or very basic or fundamental questions on biotechnology. They were actually asking very conceptual ones, or let's say slightly difficult questions on biotechnology. And because there are so many questions on biotechnology that I have not placed the PYQs over here, you can yourself go and visit them. But the questions are not that easy. This year, it has completely flipped. Biotechnology questions are very easy this particular year. In fact, there were so many things which was going on with respect to biotechnology in the entire world, and not just in the world, in India also. So for example, we had this Birsa 101 technology which came in, right? Birsa, to solve the issue of sickle cell anemia. We had this particular thing. We had multiple other technologies like the PERT technology came in. We always keep on talking about the CRISPR technology. Transposon based scissors have come in. So many news articles were there, and so many of those things. All these things is something that we had discussed, the transposon based scissor as well, or transposon based gene editing tool as well. All these things we had discussed, assuming that probably UPSC will ask at least a factual question on this, if not a very conceptual one, not a very difficult one, but at least they can ask some factual question over here, and the students would be able to solve it. But this year the question have been so simple that you could have solved it very, very easily if in case you have just read the most basics of biotechnology. So if you look at the first question of biotechnology, it is on Genome India project, very popular theme, right? In fact, we had read in the class the Genome India project ka bhi one specific version is the Gujarat Genome India Genome project, right? Because they're trying to take up the genomes of the tribal population. So in fact, a very specific Gujarat based project is going on. Correct? And we had read this particular thing also in the class, expecting that they can ask question on this, but they have asked question on a very simple theme, and in that also the question is not tricky. They have not confused the students. They have not, tried to change anything very significantly to create a trap or something. Very simple project, very simple question. Is it a part of Human Genome Project? Of course not, right? Because this is a very old project. This was one of the first projects which started. Genome India project has started, and it is an indigenous project of the country. Then obviously Department of Biotechnology is going to fund it, and the primary aim would be to catalog the genetic diversity. Very, very simple two statements. The first one is wrong and you have the answer. So this particular question now, but the point is, if UPSC has asked this question in a simpler manner this year, should we reduce our guard? Should we stop preparing in deep with respect to science and technology? Should we assume that simpler questions like this will come next year also? This is where I would differ, and this is where I would warn you that do not fall into that trap. The moment again polity and economy starts becoming easier, or let's say they go back to their traditional format, science and technology will again start becoming even more specific, and that is the correlation which you have to fit in. So you cannot lose out on any particular subject, okay? So if this question is easier, doesn't mean that next year also the question on biotechnology is going to be easier. At least you need to be aware of whatever is going on in the current affairs and whatever basics is going on. Okay? So this is something which is about Genome India project, and of course, from wherever you would have read your current affairs, from whatever magazines you would have followed, you would have definitely got this question right, because all the magazines, all the current affairs material, all the classes that we had, even in our classes, we had comprehensively covered this particular thing. Look at this. This is the Human Genome Project we had discussed, and this is the Genome India project. Every detail about it, every detail about the Human Genome Project as well. All those things were discussed in the classes as well. So I'm sure that this was not a very difficult one to predict this year as well. Now, next question. Now in the Genome India project, actually genome sequencing is happening, right? So they had asked a question on genome sequencing. So is it a theme which is not recurring? No, it is a theme. Genome sequencing is a very important theme which will keep on happening, because genome sequencing is the future. We are going to go for the sequencing of each and every person to the extent that we can create precision medicine, to the extent that we can create very specific cure for different types of genetic diseases. So this particular theme, the theme of genome sequencing, is going to carry forward, and next year probably they can ask on BIRSA, they can ask on PERT, they can ask on transpose based gene editing tools. So various other gene editing tools also they can ask, Cas9 or Cas12, all those things which we discussed in the classes as well, right? So genome sequencing, something they had asked in 2017. Next question on biotechnology, I have told you there were 2 questions in biotechnology. Even the next question is a very simple question, genetic medicine. Genetic medicine is nothing but gene therapies, all those kind of therapies that we do, right? Simply if you read the third statement, and if you have a slight basic understanding of genetic therapy, because we had done so many types of therapies, so many types of gene editing tools, so of course this is very common that genetic medicines or genetic therapy, is it going to alter the entire DNA sequence? Of course not. Of course not. You have such a big DNA, right? Billions and billions of pairs of nucleotides are going to be there. Will it be possible to edit each and alter each and every nucleotide over there? Obviously not. We simply have to solve one particular disease or one particular problem, right? Or one particular nucleotide might be a problem, or maybe a segment of gene might be a problem. That is something which we go edit, cut, paste, all those things are being done. So the entire sequence is not changed, right? And then how do you deliver these kind of gene editing tools? You use the viruses and you use the nanoparticles, because if in case you directly deliver a DNA, you directly deliver a RNA, the cells, it will degrade very faster, right? So to ensure that the DNAs and the RNAs reach their right spot, you need to put into a engineered viruses, which is something which is not going to cause any disease, or maybe even nanoparticles are being used. And this is a basic concept. It compensates for the faulty genes which is responsible for the disease, right? So that is something which is asked, very simple, again very simple question. There is no there is no complication in this particular question. The most basic question which they can ask on genetic medicine, and we had discussed about a lot of genetic medicines, genetic therapies in the classes as well, so it was well covered. Now next theme is the theme of alternate energy. They have asked just one question, green hydrogen. In fact, this year green hydrogen of course has been a recurrent theme. It's not that this is for the first time they're asking about green hydrogen. No, they have asked about green hydrogen previously as well. And this year, since the ministry had changed some bit about, has come up with the green hydrogen certification process, and that is why even we read the green hydrogen theme in the classes itself, right? And this mission, the National Green Hydrogen Mission, right, National Green Hydrogen Mission is a very basic mission. Whenever you are going to read about the green hydrogen, you have to read about this particular mission, because this is the step taken by the government. I told you the dimension is something that you have to remember. What exactly is green hydrogen is this particular statement. If there is a green hydrogen, there has to be other colors of hydrogen, right? Blue hydrogen, gray hydrogen, black hydrogen. So that is the question which you have to ask yourself, and this particular thing is blue hydrogen. So in the classes also we had discussed all these things. Now what I'm trying to say is that this year they have asked comparatively simpler question on green hydrogen. But what can be the future? What can be the future question? And is green hydrogen going to vanish away? No, it is not going to vanish away, right? Because now we are moving towards renewables. We are moving towards these cleaner sources of energy, and therefore the green hydrogen as a theme, or alternate energy as a theme, or clean energy as a theme is going to continue. Now they can ask about the challenges which are being faced in the production of green hydrogen. One of the challenges could be one of the statements. For example, we face challenges with respect to the electrolyzers, right? Very costly, very difficult to procure this particular thing, isn't it? Completely dependent on it, right? So challenges can be asked. Now over here some fact can be changed, कि India is completely independent, or let's say 100% indigenous production of electrolyzers is happening in the country. All those kind of things can be created. So do not get fooled or do not get trapped by an easy question which has been asked this year. This is a very basic question, that is fine. Yes, one statement, this is the third statement which is present over here. The green hydrogen abatement of 50 million tons of annual greenhouse gas. Now there is one more term or one more data over here which usually people read, is the production. How much of the green hydrogen do we want to produce? And that is actually 5 million metric ton, right, annually, right? So this is the data which usually we remember. In the examination, look at, this is the beauty, like this is the clever step which the examiner has played. He or she also understands that people remember this particular data. But this data is about the production of green hydrogen. How much of the green hydrogen do we want to produce? This data is about how much of the carbon dioxide or the greenhouse gases do we want to reduce by the production of green hydrogen. So this is also one of the aims. This is also one of the aims. So whenever you are reading about the National Green Hydrogen Mission, this is something which is going to come in. But this is where the examiner has not asked this particular thing, but has asked this particular thing, though it's not difficult. And again, even if you doubt the data, over here nearly is written, nearly 50 million metric ton, and we all understand that this is a softer word, so it is not an extreme thing, right? By putting nearly over here, if you understand certain ways or skills to solve the paper, you would understand that this statement is going to be right? The SOP, the people who were there in the SOP classes, right, which we take to understand, to help the students understand how to solve the paper, not just the knowledge, they would have definitely done it correct, right? So this is something, even the green hydrogen, in fact, I had discussed slightly higher version of news, because this is something which was in news, that it was the green hydrogen certification scheme was in news, right? That is why I had discussed about green hydrogen, and we had discussed about blue hydrogen, grey hydrogen, green hydrogen, and other forms of hydrogen as well. And in fact, in the classes, if you remember, if in case you were part of the classes, you remember in the side I had written all the aims of the National Green Hydrogen Mission by my hand, right? So this is something which is again not a very difficult topic to predict this year, and that is why I am saying science and technology was majorly, at least till now, can you see, it is majorly on predictable themes, right? Because UPSC had to maintain. But is it that this particular content or this particular topic, the certification topic, becomes useless for next year? No, because there were certain traps, and we discussed in the class. That is how we discussed in the class also. We do not just discuss the knowledge, we discuss how that knowledge can be asked, what traps can be placed over there, isn't it? So there were certain traps over here, certain confusing points over here, which can be exploited by the UPSC in the next year. Okay. So this is the PYQ. Green hydrogen has been a continuing theme. The application of green hydrogen, again the application of green hydrogen has been asked in 2 years, 2 questions in the same year, in 2023. Now this paper was also very difficult, just like 2023 paper, and they have asked about green hydrogen. The next segment is the defense segment. Again, we saw almost 6 questions coming from defense segment, which is a very high number of questions as compared to the previous number of questions which have been coming. But again, I would say, so in this segment you have certain themes, or you have certain questions which were not that predictable, or which were, you know, very factual, so factual that you would really not go into studying those kind of themes, right? But the first question which we will take up is the question on Mission Sudarshan Chakra, correct? So this is a very predictable theme. Now something which was announced by the Prime Minister on the eve of Independence Day, 15th August 2025. So definitely this becomes important. This also becomes important because of a huge amount of importance being given to the air defense system. Now whatever war is going on in the world, you would see that the countries are majorly focusing on the air power. Even in the Operation Sindoor, we saw the air power taking the lead. All the wars across the world is going in this dimension of having more and more air defense and air power, offensive and defensive powers. That is where the government or India is also trying to develop its own indigenous air defense systems, right? And this again was very comprehensively discussed in the classes as well. But let's have a look at the question, what exactly they are trying to ask. First dimension, what is the aim? Now the aim is does the aim look difficult? Air defense, ballistic missile defense, air offensive capabilities. Now this is a Sudarshan Chakra, it will be a very comprehensive thing, right? So therefore it has to cover each and everything. But let me tell you first thing, these 3 statements, all these 3 statements are verbatim picked up from the Prime Minister's website, the Government of India's website, the Prime Minister's website. They have been picked up verbatim from the PIB, the speech of Prime Minister, right? So the wordings, even though it might look difficult, this is the exact wording which has been used in PIB or on the Prime Minister's website, and I'll show you the sources also. Okay. So in that sense, if you have read about Sudarshan Chakra, obviously you will read about these 3 points. There is nothing else you will read about. You have to understand the aim of the mission. Definitely you will understand the aim of the mission. Okay? You will understand what exactly the mission is trying to enhance or develop, rapid, precise, powerful defense responses. And of course, it will improve strategic autonomy. If we are having an indigenous system, it improves what? Strategic autonomy. Then, now third statement is something which even I got a bit set back. It is written over here, one of the aims is to cover all public places of India. Now, I understand if in case even I was sitting in the examination, probably in the exam conditions, I would have marked this wrong because it is saying all public places, and it doesn't make sense also. Like, India is such a big country, all the public places have to be covered by 2035 is a very big deal. So that is why I started searching on the internet whether this particular statement is correct or not. But to my surprise, because I thought some critical public places and something like that would be covered, but to my surprise, this is exactly what is. So this is the website, the PM's website, PM of India's website is there, right? And highlight from the PM's address. Look at this, what is written over here in the same website. All public places will be covered by expanded nationwide security shield by 2035, ensuring comprehensive protection for nation while showcasing India's commitment to self-reliant defense. Same thing is given in PIB. Now, this particular segment I have taken the screenshot from PIB. All public places will be covered by expanded nationwide security shield. So I don't know what kind of an answer is UPSC going to give in this particular thing, but but as per me, because it is directly mentioned in the government's website, definitely the answer is going to be A over here, right? So this is again a very predictable theme and something which even in fact we had covered in the classes very comprehensively. The vision for 2035. This is a screenshot from the handouts only, right? And we talked about the various layers. We actually went into a slight depth also. I made you guys understand about all the layers of this particular segment, all the layers of the Sudarshan Chakra, the 5-layer system. But that does not mean UPSC cannot ask it in the next year. They can definitely ask something or the other over here in the next year, because air defense, air power becomes very, very important. Okay? So this is something which you can expect in the future of it. All right, that is something which is there. Now, stealth. Now, stealth as a theme is becoming popular, or let's say has been there. Have they asked stealth previously? Yes, they have asked, not directly, but since they had asked about aircrafts, 4.5 generation, 5 generation, all those kind of aircrafts were asked, and that generational difference is because of stealth only. So if you know what is a 4.5 generation and what is the difference between 5th generation aircraft, you would know that the stealth is the difference. And that is why through direct or indirect mechanism, UPSC is asking about stealth, right? And that is why now, what is the understanding? How do we approach these kind of things? So whenever stealth and such kind of technology is there, which is becoming very popular, which is very critical now, stealth technology is a very critical technology. If you do not have it, you will face failures in the air defense system, or you will face failures in any particular war, because it becomes very, very critical. Therefore, you have to read about it. Now, this thing probably you will not get in all the sources that you were reading. Probably not everyone is going to cover this particular thing. Okay? And that is where your smartness has to come in. All right. So over here in the classes, of course, we had covered this particular thing, the exact statements, the exact thing has been covered. Let me just show you the question first, and then you will realize this particular thing. So stealth looks very small. The stealth object, when you have stealth in the system, the object looks very small, very, very small on the radar. You will not be able to identify whether it's an aircraft or it's a bird, right? So that is the kind of thing which stealth objects or stealth technology does. Now, second statement I'll come later. Third statement, it talks about they are coated with metamaterials to increase the scattering of electromagnetic radiation. Now, over here, if in case you are part of the SOP classes, you would understand how to solve this particular question. You simply have to focus over here. Now, of course, I'm not going to talk about SOPs over here, but right now, if in case you're part of it, you would understand that you simply have to focus over here. But conceptually also, if we talk about conceptually also, you will see that if in case the stealth object increases the scattering, if in case the stealth object increases the scattering, will it not become even more easier to detect? that you have to reduce the scattering of electromagnetic. If in case the radar is going, the electromagnetic wave is going and hitting this particular plane and coming back, you have to reduce this particular thing, or you have to bend it in some other direction, or you have to make sure that it gets absorbed rather than getting scattered. So increase of scattering is definitely a wrong conceptual understanding. So this is wrong. Now, second statement is a slightly difficult statement, let's say, or at least in the examination condition, you would not have, probably it's difficult to take decision on, which is saying that it can be detected using specific frequencies, okay. So stealth, the basic understanding is ki yes, it can be, it cannot be detected. That is what is the meaning of stealth, right? But over here, they are trying to say using specific frequencies, okay. So certain frequencies are there. If you reduce your search in a very narrow frequencies, yes, stealth objects, even the objects that are having stealth, can be detected. So over here, if in case you are using, if in case you have the understanding of how to solve the questions as well, you can see can be is used over here, right? And specific frequencies is used over here. So you would understand that from the SOPs classes also you would understand that such questions you can make right, fine. So this of course this is going to be correct, this is going to be correct, and this is certainly going to be wrong conceptually itself. Now if you have a look at what exactly was covered in the classes, so certainly all these things was covered in the classes, that it looks like a bird, very small, it looks like a bird, they have radar absorbent materials, and all those conceptual understanding was well given in the classes as well. Now, moving on to the next one, the drone swarm. Now, this is something which is an event which has happened, which is happening all across the world in all the wars, Russia, Ukraine, whatever war is going on, they are using the drone swarms. In fact, even the Operation Sindoor also, our adversary tried to use this particular thing. So, this question, even if you had not read directly, you could have solved it, especially the people who were there in the smart current affairs classes. Using SOPs, definitely you can solve this particular thing. So, if you look at it, GPS spoofing is something that we had discussed in the class, okay. Now, GPS spoofing in fact was in news also. If in case you were reading the current affairs from any other material or magazine, something like that, GPS spoofing definitely should have been there if it's a good material. Right, so GPS spoofing was definitely there, even we had that in the classes. The second statement says that individual drones can communicate or not. So if it is a swarm, definitely you need to have some level of communication, right? So obviously you cannot say the individual drones cannot communicate, right? Then the first statement says that they use terahertz band of frequency. Now for the SOP students, I think you would understand you have so many other bands. So if you have multiple options available, you know what to do. Obviously cannot be not discussing SOPs over here, so not going into depth of it. But yeah, in this particular question, if not directly, could have been solved using the certain skills of solving the paper. But this again, I would not say it's a very obscure theme, although many of you might not have focused on this particular thing. But this question was again, we can keep it in the easy, moderate to difficult category itself. Fine. So in the examination condition, probably this would have been slightly difficult to solve. So GPS spoofing is something that in fact we had discussed in the class also, and drones is a theme which is very important. Now drones, last year also 2025 they have asked about drones, but of course this was a very easy question on drones, because the way the question was asked was very easy, but that is where you cannot stop your analysis. You have to understand what exactly they had asked, what different types of drones. Although they asked the question in a very easy manner by giving all types over here so that you can eliminate easily, but they are entering into the depth of drones. This is what is the understanding you need to have, okay? And by asking drone swarms, they are definitely indicating that drones are going to be important in the coming future. Maybe in the future you will be asked about the names of the drones, famous names of the drones. In a factual question, they can ask you, isn't it? What exactly and they can ask you to differentiate between Indian drones and the foreign drones. All those kind of things can be there. So future of this particular theme definitely is going to be there, right? So drones, because they are overpowering the kind of air defense or the air warfare that we have. So drones is going to continue, okay? Then now this question, okay, they have entered into defense manufacturing. Like where exactly these things are manufactured? Now this is a very factual question, okay, because we have so much to read in this examination. I would not say that we are expected to learn so much, okay. So even if in the examination you were not very well aware of this particular thing, definitely this is something which you might have heard. This is where you would have gotten confused, because Sukhoi, everyone understands, is a Russian fighter jet, right? But we have adopted it, and that is why this I comes over here, the MKI, the I is for India, right? Because we have adopted, we have had the technology transfer from Russia, so this is being built in India itself. This of course is an indigenous tank. Akula, by the name itself, it's a Russian tank, but even if you were not knowing this particular thing, it is okay. Some questions can be left. So all the questions cannot be easy, all the questions cannot be solved, or at least, you know, you're not supposed to know each and everything under the sun. So I would say ki, have some, you know, have some patience, have some breather for yourself. It's okay if in case you were not able to solve this particular question. Okay. Now, then comes this particular question. They are entering into defense administration. Now, last year also in 2024, they had asked about this particular question, which is the brigadier and all kinds of defense-based administration. This year again they have entered into the depth of defense administration. Now, this particular theme could be something that you can think of having in your notes. Maybe you can start preparing at least some basics of defense administration. Now, this is something which is a demand now, because they are asking a lot about defense administration. They had also asked about CDS also. When CDS became popular, they had asked about CDS also, the Chief of Defense Staff, right? So this is a theme which I would say is important for the coming years as well. So apart from defense technology, defense administration is something which is becoming important, okay? Then you have this particular question, which is on defense regulation. Now, bomb disposal system, again, this is one of the very obscure question. I'm sure that the Red Fort bomb blast had happened and multiple other blasts have happened in the country. So it's not that it is completely out of the blue, but again, I would say you are not expected to remember all these standards, right? You're not expected to remember such in-depth understanding of defense regulations or defense-based laws. So again, this is a question. If in case you are not able to solve in the examination, that is perfectly fine. But for this question, yes, this is correct. This is the Indian standards. The SOP student or the smart current affairs students, I think you could have applied SOP over here to get the right answer. Will it improve or not the interoperability? Of course, it will improve it. And was it developed by DRDO along with Russia? So this is the only place where you might have gotten confused, because this is the indigenous disposal system or indigenous standard rather than being developed along with Russia. So this again was a difficult theme along with the difficult dimensions, difficult question also. So this question again was a very difficult question. Okay. So then came the space dimension. Again, just one question is there. They could have asked a lot more questions. So many things are in news. You know, GSLV Mark III, PSLVs, the failure which has happened. So many other things were in news. Right? Liquid engine, semi-cryogenic engine, all those kind of things were in news, which we took up in the classes also. Nisar satellite, so many other things were there in the news. But still, they had stuck to a very old question. Now, this is not a new question. Now, this is not a current affairs based, you know, very recent current affairs based question, because this development has happened previously. This development also happened previously. So when I was teaching current affairs in the last 2 years, like 2 years back, then I had discussed about this particular thing. So this is something where UPSC is trying to ask slightly old questions. So that is why I'm saying the current affairs which you have read this particular year does not become redundant for the next year, right? It can be directly, or it will have more importance next year. Okay. So these two are definitely correct. Over here, probably you could have applied some mind if in case you were there in the classes, or in case you were generally aware about what is going on with respect to space privatization, you could have applied some mind over here. Now understand this, they are trying to say the Skyroot Aerospace has developed liquid fuel for GSLV. Okay, liquid fuel for GSLV. Now this will only happen when we have privatized the GSLV. Right now we have privatized the SSLV, or like we have given some contracts for SSLV and we have given it for PSLVs. We are still in process of giving it for GSLV. So if in case, so in the classes we had discussed these two things, right? If you have a look, we had discussed these two things. The first ever privately built PSLV, right? This is something which we had discussed in the class as well. Then in terms of SSLV, the technology was officially transferred to Hindustan Aeronautics Limited. So because we had not discussed about GSLV, therefore that is one way of eliminating this particular thing. But in fact, try to understand the beauty of UPSC over here, that Skyroot Aerospace has developed liquid fuel, but not for GSLV, for itself, and that is known as the Raman engine that they have, right? The Raman engine. They also have a Dhawan engine, which is a cryogenic based engine. Okay, so Skyroot is a very independent organization, private organization, which has its own rockets, the Vikram rocket, and it tries to develop everything for its own. Okay, so this is again, I would say, because it's an old question, not an easy question to solve in the examination, completely factual question, probably I'll definitely keep it in the difficult category, right? So this is about this particular question. Then you have the last question, which is the black box question. Now over here, this question tells you that you need to be aware. Whatever technology is going on, and this definitely came in because of the Air India accident which happened. Definitely this question is because of that particular thing, right? So we should be aware, we should be vigilant of what exactly is becoming more popular in the news. Now this was one of the most popular news. It's not a very obscure question, right? But again, how do we read so much? That is the problem. But over here, if you have some conceptual understanding, we can talk about statement number 1. So what happens, this black box, let's say, goes inside the ocean, okay? And now you have to find this particular black box. The first statement says that they carry a beacon emitting red light. Now from your environment knowledge, can you tell me that the photic zone only lies to some extent? Even the sunlight cannot penetrate deeper into the ocean, right? So deeper in the ocean is completely dark because light cannot travel that easily in the ocean or in the water. So if in case this black box is kept or is present at the depth of the ocean, if it has this red light, will this red light be visible to a person over here, which is in the upper surface of the ocean? It will not be visible. So if just having this conceptual understanding, if you are able to apply this particular thing in the examination, I understand this is difficult to do it, certainly difficult to do it. So this could have been eliminated, right? So over there, instead of light, they use sound. The other two statements are comparatively simpler, that they record both the voice and the flight data. Of course, the new age black box do definitely record those particular things. And the third statement is again easier, that they are made up of very strong materials like stainless steel or titanium. Of course, because you have to resist all kinds of forces and rusting and everything over there. So this is about the understanding of science and technology section. Majorly, we saw that most of the questions were on predictable themes, right? They were on the themes which are there in the current affairs, and there were also certain questions which have been coming along, like green hydrogen questions have been asked, drone question has been asked. So all those questions were there. And what did they ask? Did they ask very difficult statements in that particular question? No, they did not ask it. Majority of the questions you can see are basic in nature, conceptual in nature, at least this year, and that is where my fear lies. Do not believe that this is the exact replica of the science and technology section which UPSC has been asking. So for the new students for whom this would have been the first prelims, or who are likely to go given prelims in the next year, do not fall into this trap. Probably next year science and technology can be difficult. They can again go back to their previous version of asking science and technology questions, right? So pick up the themes from here. Think of what dimensions they have asked, and we have discussed what dimensions can come in the future, and be prepared for it, right? So the major crux is, obviously the paper was very difficult. Not just the questions were difficult, the way the question was asked was difficult, what was asked under the question was difficult for other subjects. But at least for this year, science and technology was comparatively easier as compared to other subjects. This can flip the next year, okay? Even in fact, in science and technology, you see there has been no innovation in the format of the questions. Like the way they have asked very simple question, no assertion reasoning type of question, which they have used in polity, they have used in other kinds of subjects, right? They have not used over here in the science and technology section. But can this not happen for the next year? Can they not ask those kind of assertion reasoning based question in science and technology? They can definitely ask. So science and technology is not just a factual subject. You have to take care of the concepts. You have to have correlations between the concepts as well. So this is all from our sides with respect to the analysis of science and technology. Thank you so much. I wish you all the best for your future endeavors, and keep working hard for this examination. Thanks a lot.